This PowerPoint presentation is on shared reading in the classroom. What is shared reading? Shared reading is the use of big books as a teaching tool. Big books with enlarged text may be used so that the story can be shared with a large group of children as visibly and interactively as one might share a normal-sized book with one child. Share reading can be an enjoyable and cooperative interactive reading activity. As the text becomes familiar, the children are encouraged to join in the reading with classmates and teacher. Share reading can also be based on the bedtime story experience, meaning that like bedtime reading, the story is read and reread as often as the story enchants the children. According to Don Holdaway of 1960, he was a teacher, a writer, lecturer, reading clinician, and a consultant. In New Zealand, Holdaway encouraged teachers to find ways to replicate the bedtime story in their classrooms. In leveraging Holdaway's concept, children would become partners as co-readers with their respective teacher. This became known as shared reading. Holdaway recommends the use of big books as a technique to foster natural literacy development. Holdaway's natural learning model in regards to demonstration, participation, practice, and performance. This methodology in each part of this step starts with demonstration. The teacher directs, demonstrates, models, explains, questions, initiates, and guides exploration. The learner observes demonstrations and absorbs the feeling of being in a literate community. Participation. The teacher induces an active involvement within the class. Reading is shared at this stage. The learner participates, negotiates meaning cooperatively, and questions. The practice part is the teacher enables, support, and encourages children to dominate the reading. The learner practices being a reader, gain personal confidence in using the skills of literacy, self-regulates by taking personal responsibility for application and correction. And finally, the performance. The teacher rewards, monitors, and records new increments of skills. The learner may share, perform, dramatize, display new increments of components, and experience the joys of literacy. What are the benefits in shared reading? With shared reading, children get to experience the reading model from the teacher. Children become participants in an environment that promotes their active and attention and participation. Students become knowledgeable in the concepts of print, its relations in conveying ideas from the text. Children's oral language is strengthened. Children learn to follow the story and comprehension is increased. Children build vocabulary from frequent repetition. Children's fluency will increase with each practice. The environment and the tools in shared reading. Children are seated around the big book in the carpet area. Children have full view of the big book. The purpose of using a big book is to create a feeling in that every child is in his or her parent's lap, listening to a story. Children may have an easel, teachers may have an easel or a chalkboard. Helpful tools consist of post-its, highlighters, markers, and pointers. These are all materials that the teacher can just have handy to incorporate with the shared reading lesson. Reading materials as tools. Prior to children reading on their own, shared reading promotes an opportunity to discover new ideas and different ways of approaching reading skills. Some examples of materials that can be leveraged to obtain said learning are oversized books. Again, the big books, songs, and rhymes are good because they have a lot of repetition and it's very musical-like. Poems, same thing, a lot of repetition, music-like. Daily messages and updates, something that you do every morning anyways. Classroom bulletin boards. Children love to read classroom bulletin boards over and over. How to conduct a shared reading session. Before the teacher begins a shared reading lesson, the teacher will choose a high-quality literacy book, which will be appropriate for the group that this activity is intended for. Teacher will give a high level of overview of the story, including the characters and the storyline without giving great detail, and probe the students as a means of engaging them. This will raise the children's attention and curiosity. During the shared reading, the teacher will model reading strategies by having the students follow along visually as the teacher guides through the printed text with a pointer. Participation is a key component of this activity. On occasion, the teacher may interject to ask questions of the students about their predictions, for example, if this is something that they are working on. After the reading, the teacher can confirm students' predictions as they turn and talk. Teacher may question students with open-ended questions, which will promote students to build connections between what they have had thought and what actually occurred in the story. Following reading sessions will become more engaging between the class and teacher as they are shared the role of the readers. This is a sample lesson of a shared reading that consists of one day. Sometimes lessons may consist of one day, sometimes they can consist of 3 to 5 days. In this lesson of shared reading, the activity is using the book The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle. Pre-reading. Show the cover of the book and discuss the title and author. Talk about the book, might be about, by the title and the illustrations. Write down the predictions. Take a book walk. Go through the story and look at the illustrations. See the names of the fruits and different foods in the pictures. Ask questions about the different foods. Activate the prior knowledge. Discuss the days of the week in the story. Say them in order for students if they don't already know them. Talk about the caterpillars and what happens to them. During the reading, at the end of each page, predict what will happen next. On each page, count the number of foods or fruits the caterpillar eats. Predict the number of foods for each following day in the story. Have the students join in on repetitive lines. Before the end of the story, have the students predict what will happen to the caterpillar. Post-reading, go back and check the students' predictions. Have the story on sentence strips and put them in sequential order on a pocket chart. Retell the story using a flannel board. Students can do this activity later independently or with a partner during center time. Students can act out the story. Discuss how a caterpillar changes from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Make a graph of the food and how many pieces he eats of each. Students can make individual books. Students love to reread and reread The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I think it's a very famous story for shared reading. This video will demonstrate a shared reading in action. After the video, teachers will discuss in small groups the T-chart. In the T-chart, teachers will have observed what the teacher did and what the students did during the shared reading. Some of the positive results of shared reading. In this abstract was taken from the Journal of Early Intervention, where the success of shared reading is highlighted. The effects of 2 preschool-based shared reading interventions were evaluated with 95 children, the ages of 2 to 5 years old, from low-income families. Language skills of the children were below age levels as measured by standardized tests. Children were pre-tested and randomly assigned one of 3 conditions: A, no treatment control; B, typically shared reading conditions; and C, dialogic interactive shared reading conditions. For both of the interventions conditions, undergraduate volunteers read to children in small groups. Following the 6-week intervention, children were post-tested on measures of oral language, listening comprehension, and phonological sensitivity. Both interventions produced positive effects. Results favored dialogic reading were found on measures of descriptive use of language, whereas results favoring typically shared reading were found on measures of listening comprehension and alliteration detection. Thank you to the effects of shared reading interventions of emerging literacy skills at the risk of preschoolers, the Journal of Early Interventions, fall of 1999.